Fantastic. So I think we're live now. We're just going to give participants another couple of minutes to join the call because it can take a little time for everyone to filter through. So I'll literally just give this until my clock ticks over to 2 minutes past, and then we'll get going with the session. But thank you to those that have joined already. We will start the session soon. Okay, well, my clock's just ticked over to 2 minutes past, so I think we're ready to go. So again, thank you very much everyone that's joined, and we'll welcome people as they join us throughout the meeting. Firstly, I'd like to start with an apology for those of you that were in the meeting last week, which was unfortunately cut short due to some technical difficulties, and thank you very much for rearranging your schedule so that you could join us this evening. This is an extra session that we put in, and partly that was to do with feedback around the times of these sessions, and we're happy to accommodate wherever we can. So we're very glad to have everyone with us tonight. So welcome to this East West Railway Company online session with your neighbours from Clapham Green to the Eversdens. Following the launch of the second round of non-statutory consultation on Wednesday the 31st of March, we've been holding sessions with people across the route to really give more detail of the plans and address in the chat function, as well as we're able to, initial questions and thoughts about our options and proposals. I will say that these sessions, just by their nature, are quite transmission. So there are lots of other ways that you can ask us questions, including email. You can use live chat events, which we're using more and more now, which are proving very helpful for people that want to have a bit more of a back and forth with our experts. The nature of these sessions mean they can feel a little bit transmit, but we'll try and get through as many questions as we possibly can by the end of the session. And we'll also obviously hope that the presentation answers a lot of the questions that you might have come here with this evening. We're going to start this with a presentation that will run for between 25 and 30 minutes, followed by 25 to 30-minute Q&A, and then we'll wrap up with some next steps. So my name is Hannah Staunton. I'm the head of external affairs at the East West Railway Company. So I think we're trying through the slides. We'll just go back to the last one. Thank you. Before we get kicking with the presentation, I'd just like to take the opportunity to introduce you to everyone else who'll be speaking here this evening. These are some of our subject matter experts and some of our sort of senior leaders within the business. So we've got Will Gallagher, our strategy director. We have got Ian Parker, our delivery director. We've got Martin Phillips, our head of customer strategy. Paul Sparrow, our programme manager for this section of the route, and Jorn Pace, who's our land and property manager, and they'll all be talking throughout the presentation. We've also got some support from an external agency that works with me and my team, and they're running the slides and taking notes and whatnot, so there are a couple of extra people in here as well. Before we start, just to say that my colleagues now will just switch off all their cameras and pop themselves on mute so there's no distraction, and do note that audiences in these sessions are on mute as well, but that's really just to avoid the distraction of noise in the background, so please do use the chat function to talk with us. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these calls as we go through, but you should find the chat function relatively easy at the top of your screen with what looks like sort of a little word bubble. Before we get going into the detail of the options that we've got in front of us, just a word on what we're consulting on. So this is a 10-week consultation, which is an opportunity for people across the route to share views on emerging proposals for East West Rail and for views on the broader scheme as well. The consultation document covers two key areas, and it's important that we look at both of these as well. One is the customer experience and railway operations. So we really want to make sure that whatever we build and whatever alignment that it takes finally, that we're building something that really is working for passengers and passengers being taken from local communities, obviously. So it's a very important part for us. And secondly, that proposed infrastructure development. So those proposed infrastructure developments along the route, which I think is probably what you're here to listen to tonight in the most part. So that's going to be the bulk of our presentation this evening. The consultation zone for this consultation is much larger than it was for the previous consultation, reaching all the way from Oxford to Cambridge. So you'll see Oxford in the bottom left and Cambridge in the top right. The consultation zone is really just an area in which we're concentrating our promotion for the consultation. It absolutely doesn't mean that people outside of that zone shouldn't and won't take part. We do want to make sure that everyone that's got an interest in the route can take part and is active in making sure that we're building the right infrastructure for their community. So this is the consultation zone that we're working with this time, which is broadly speaking a 2-kilometre swathe either side of the central point of any of the alignments that we're talking about in the documentation. And then you'll see that it's kind of got rough edges because we just made some accommodations to make sure that we weren't cutting through communities and that we're sort of using natural boundaries as well to make sure that there's sort of a logic behind the structure of the consultation zone. But as I say, that's really just there to make sure that the promotion for the consultation is within a key area. The consultation itself, as I said, we've got 6 areas that we are looking at for the infrastructure part of the consultation. I'm just going to hand over to Will Gallagher, our strategy director, who will walk you through those 6 areas.
That's great. Thanks very much, Hannah. So if we flick onto the next slide, you can see there's a full suite of geographies here. So the at the west end from Oxford to Bicester, where we will need to make some interventions around Oxford Station and also potentially at the other stations through to Bicester and then at Bicester level crossing. You'll then note that there's some dotted lines. That's really because this is an area that we are either under construction already, sort of between Bicester and Bletchley, or where we're currently engaging with government to make the case for getting going on the project, as in the spur to Aylesbury. And then you can see there's a series of sections, the light green, which is along the Marston Vale line from Bletchley to Bedford, the section in red which runs through Bedford, the section we're here to talk about tonight in terms of the sort of various route alignments for the new section of railway that gets you from where we come out of Bedford to the north across to where we then take a single route into Cambridge in the sort of double boxed blue and then the green, double boxed green sections. So these are all the interventions that we need to make in order to deliver a full Oxford Cambridge service. And so, that's what will be, that's what the consultation covers. And as I say, it's what the mustard box is what we'll be talking to you about in more detail tonight. But before we do that, I'm going to hand over to Martin, I think, who will be talking to us about customer service.
Thanks, Will. Good evening, everyone. My name is Martin Phillips. I'm Head of Customer Strategy at East West Rail. This part of the consultation and included in the consultation documents is about what future customers want from their railway experience. So whether customers are using the connectivity for work, for education, leisure, or to visit family, friends, we want to hear your views about how and what the service needs to be like. So our aim is to set a new standard for customer experience, and your views actually will help us build capability into the design of the rolling stock stations, trains and the stations at a really, really early stage. So on the next slide, you'll see that there's some particular areas we're really interested in hearing from people. We're taking an end-to-end journey approach. So we're looking at how customers want to travel, actually how they explore, how they go onto a website, how they book tickets, right the way through the actual railway experience at stations, on trains, and then through to post-journey and how we can get feedback on the journey. The train service specification, including how we integrate with local transport, calling patterns and the timetable, would really like to hear your views on. Stations experience, what facilities, and again, what facilities are on the trains. how you'd like to interact with colleagues and what colleagues actually offer in terms of customer experience. Again, we'd like to hear your views. And something we really know is important to customers is information, how information is provided. And so we'd like to hear your views on that. Thank you very much. I'll hand you over to my colleague, Ian Parker.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. So yeah, I'm Ian Parker. I'm the Programme Delivery Director for East West Rail. And I guess my responsibility is really to ensure that we find the best design solution for this scheme, one that best meets the needs of you as the local communities and our customers on the trains, and also fits best with our business case. And I guess also it's important that we construct the scheme in a way that's least harmful to the environment and most affordable and cost effective for the taxpayer. And again, very much part of my role is to ensure that that's what happens. So just moving on to the next slide, in this presentation, where we're talking primarily about the section of the scheme, as Will said, between Clapham Green, which is just north of Bedford, and the Eversdens, which is southeast of Cambridge, as you know. But I'm also going to touch a little bit towards the end of the presentation on the route into Cambridge from the south, southeast, really. And I'm also going to tell you a little bit about the work that we've done, which you'll see in our documents, to just re-examine the route into Cambridge from the north, which you'll be aware was rejected earlier on in the development process. But now that we are looking at stations to the north of Camborne, we've reassessed that. I'll tell you a little bit about that. All the alignments, I think it's worth saying, that we are presenting in our consultation now are based on the route option E, which we consulted upon back in 2019. So all of these alignments and the options that we're presenting are around that corridor. So moving to the next slide, I'll show you a little bit more detail on that. Over the past year, we've been, excuse me, we've been looking at lots of alignments between Bedford and Cambridge along the route option E corridor. We've narrowed them down from a long list of 9 options to a short list of 5, and we've done that by looking at the best performing alignments that connect new stations, which we're proposing at either Tempsford or St Neots. Excuse me a minute. That's better. And new stations to the north or south of Camborne. And the station options that we've considered at St Neots and Tempsford would all provide, as you can see there, connectivity for passengers between our railway, between East West Rail and the East Coast Main Line. Just worth noting that the station we're proposing at St Neots is an entirely new station. It's not to be confused with the existing station that's in the town. At Camborne, the station options we've considered that there have been looked at in terms of serving both the community as it is today and with further sort of consideration for how that settlement might develop in future years. And you know, for a railway that's designed around connecting people and communities together, obviously looking at future development is really important for us. So in our consultation document, although we've presented the 5 options that are shown in this slide, we've focused in particular on 2 alignments which we think best meet the needs of the business case and the communities. These are what we've referred to as the blue alignment and the purple alignment, alignments 1 and 9. And both of these follow Highways England's new scheme from Black Cat to Caxton Gibbet and provide a station north of Camborne. When we consulted previously, a Highways England scheme hadn't been published. It now has, and as you probably know, they've submitted a development consent order application just a month or so ago, a couple of months ago. So if we move on to the next slide, we're not covering these in numeric order. I think there's a more logical way of explaining them. So if we start with alignment 2, so alignment 2, when it leaves Bedford, swings east to past north of Ravensden and Roxton. We'd then build a viaduct between Black Cat roundabout and the East Coast Main Line, which would also cross the River Ouse, which is in floodplain at that point. And as I said earlier, we'd provide a station onto the East Coast Main Line, which is to the south of St Neots. And from there, the alignment would then follow the route of the proposed A428. This is the Black Cat to Caxton Gibbet scheme that Highways England has published, in a sort of a northeasterly direction, and then it swings south across the scheme to a station south and west of Cambourne. So again, a viaduct section would be needed to get the viaduct up and over the A428 at this point, and then the alignment would continue southeast to join the common section of the scheme from Little Eversden. So if we then move on to alignment 1, so alignment 1 begins pretty much on the same alignment as 2, as it leaves Bedford. Again, it crosses the A1 and the East Coast Main Line, and again it provides a new station to the south of St Neots. And again, like option 2, it provides a route which follows the course of the A428, the new A428. But this time, rather than swinging south to a station south of Cambourne, we're proposing a station north of Cambourne, close to the existing A428. You won't be surprised to know we're discussing these alignments very carefully with Highways England, who are a sister arm's length body to East West Railco, and so we're trying to build on their knowledge and obviously the survey work and consultation work that they've done along their corridor, so that we can minimise really any cumulative impacts of the two schemes. It's probably worth just saying that each scheme is going to seek entirely separate planning powers. Highways England's already submitted its application. We're some years behind them, of course, in our process, but that doesn't mean we can't start to capitalise on any efficiencies that just having a single transport corridor might offer. Alignment 1 does perform better than Alignment 2 in environmental impact terms, and it's more affordable than Alignment 2. And we believe it offers greater benefits in terms of housing and growth opportunities. Compared with our reference design, which is Alignment 8, which I'll go on to talk about in a moment, Alignment 1 is over 300 million cheaper. It's between 310 and 340 million cheaper. So, you know, it's a more affordable option. So if I move on to talk about Alignment 8, on the next slide, thank you. This doesn't follow the A428 corridor at all. It's the shortest alignment between Bedford and Cambridge. It most closely represents the option E route, and for this reason we've left it as an option because it's become effectively our reference alignment against which everything else has been measured. And Alignment 8, as you can see here, connects stations in Thamesford and Cambourne South, completely avoids the A428 corridor, but instead it passes south of Ravensden and Roxton. It's got a viaduct across the A421 and also the A1 trunk road, and then of course across the Great Ouse. It then goes on to pass Brick Hill Country Park, and north of Thamesford it crosses the East Coast Main Line, which again is where we'd construct a station. The alignment then carries on to pass south of Abbottsley, and it passes between Great Grandon and Eltisley, and then it curves south to pass between Caxton and Cambourne. And as I say, there would be a station to the south and west of Cambourne. Following on from there to the south of Cambourne, it passes a solar farm and the Cambourne Nature Reserve, then passes east of Bourne, west of Caldicot, and then east of Kingston and west of Toft, and then again it joins the other alignments that I've described before at the Eversdens. So we've benchmarked other alignments against this one, against Alignment 8, and we've concluded that this is actually the most expensive option, at between 2.3–2.5 billion. And there's more information on the costs in our consultation documents, as you'll have seen, hopefully. And environmentally, route option 8, the yellow alignment, performs slightly less well than the other options that we've considered. So if we then move on to route alignment 6, so route alignment 6 connects stations at St Neots and Cambourne South. It's cheaper than alignment 8 to the tune of about 270 to 300 million, and it does perform better than alignment 8 on environmental grounds. In journey times, however, it's not much difference in length. And it performs equally well with alignment 8, really. which offers the quickest journey times between Bedford and Cambridge, but literally by a few minutes. Between Clapham Green and the A1, the alignment follows a similar route to alignment 1, passes just north of Black Cat roundabout on Viaduct, and then it includes the station with East Coast Main Line, which is near St Neots. And then from there, we'd have to dive under the A428 scheme to pass south of Abbottsley. So obviously, building a bridge to carry the A428 over this railway at this point would be disruptive. So clearly, if this is an option that's selected, we'd work with Highways England to find a way to minimise that disruption, but recognising that their scheme is a few years ahead of ours. So there would be some planning challenges with that. So continuing east, the alignment passes between Great Grandon and Elterslie, curves south to pass between Caxton and Camborne, and again we'd provide a station south of Camborne. After that, the alignment actually is the same as alignment 8, so I won't go through that again. If we then move on finally to alignment 9, thank you. So alignment 9 is the second of our two, what we've described as our emerging preferences, along with alignment 1. Alignment 9 is again cheaper than the reference alignment 8. This time it's 120 to 130 million cheaper, so a little more expensive than alignment 1. But in our view, it's the best alignment to serve stations at Thamesford and Camborne North. It then carries on from Clapham Green, south of Ravenston and Roxton, with viaducts over the A421 and A1 and the Great Ouse to the new station at Thamesford. Continues north under the A428 scheme. As with alignment 6, crossing under a road scheme which has just been built is challenging, but again, we'd work with Highways England to minimise the impact of that. And then again, as with alignment 1 and 2, we'd follow the course of the A428 scheme as it heads north and west, and we'd stay on the north side of the dual carriageway as far as the new station, which again would be north of Camborne. To the east of Camborne, the alignment follows the same route again, past Caldecote, Hardwick and Toft. Just a further word on integration with the A428. So as we've drawn up our proposals, we've taken a worst case position. We've assumed no real integration between the two schemes, other than that they follow a similar corridor. But of course, in practice, we want to work with Highways England to ensure that we do integrate schemes as much as we can. And there's a willingness I would say by both ourselves and by Highways England to do that. So that's the 5 route options that we're asking your views on. All of them are feasible. Each offers a slightly different series of benefits. There's a lot more detail on each of those in the consultation documents. As I've said before, our preference is for either alignment 1 or 9. Beyond that, we honestly don't have a preference, and we're genuinely looking for your views, both on those 2 alignments and on the others that we feel are less good. But you know, again, as local communities, we'd like to hear your views on that. A few words on the route into Cambridge. If we move on to the next slide, please. Thank you. Well, keep going to the next one. Thanks. So so far we've focused on the scheme in what I've just described to the west of the Eversdens. Our proposed alignment to the east at this point is to head south and east via and connect to the existing Shepworth Branch Railway, which a lot of people know as the King's Cross line, and then the West Anglia Main Line, which takes us into Cambridge. I'm not going to go into as much detail about this, but sufficient to say that the route would involve most likely a grade separated junction where we join the Shepworth Branch line. Again, that's something we're consulting on, and we're looking at whether it's necessary to close the Hawkston Road level crossing to accommodate the fact that there would be a lot more railway traffic on that line when we add our trains. Network Rail, as you probably know, is proposing a new Cambridge South station on the West Anglia Main Line. Our intention would be to include this station in our route, as it allows us to access new employment areas or employment sites in that area. We need to widen the route into Cambridge, the railway running into Cambridge, to provide capacity to accommodate the additional trains that we would add, because obviously it's quite a busy line at the moment, and we don't want to add to congestion on that. So we'd add additional tracks. Many people, as you'll know, will have contacted us to ask us to look again at the potential for a route entering Cambridge from the north. Given that we are now looking at, as I said earlier on in the presentation, given we're now looking at Camborne North stations, we thought it was a good idea to just review the decisions that have been made previously on that. And if we move on to the next slide, you'll see a summary of our conclusions on this. So the emerging preference, as I say, is to build the route to Camborne from the west along the A428 corridor. So we've kind of assumed that would form the starting point for a northern route. A northern route is technically feasible. What we've looked at is how well it compares with the proposed southern route, the one I've just described, both in operational terms, in terms of its impact on the environment, and physically, how difficult it is to build. So a northern route would cross the A14 between Bar Hill and Girton. Possibly it would have a station at Northstowe or Oakington, and then it would join the West Anglia main line south of Waterbeach, and then would continue into Cambridge along that line. What you can see from this slide is that in terms of the track length, there's not an awful lot of difference. The lines are both similar in length, but because the line speed on the Anglia main line is a bit slower, the maximum permissible line speed, it would take longer to get to Cambridge from the north than from the south. The northern approach also requires more bridge structures, and there'll be more properties in close proximity to the railway. And crucially, on the route from where it crosses back over the A or under the A14 down into Cambridge, we've estimated that it would probably require the demolition of between something like 39 and 84 properties. And clearly what we've been trying to do as we've developed this railway is to try and avoid the loss of any particularly residential properties. So we need to look harder at just how many would be affected if we were to use that route, but sufficient to say it's a lot more than were we to enter Cambridge from the south. I think a further point finally that's worth noting here is that to access Cambridge South Station, we'd need to run the service right through Cambridge Central Station and then widen the railway down to the new station, where we'd have to reverse our trains back out. It's not ideal. It's not consistent with the Network Rail design at the moment for Cambridge South Station, and they'd need to add some terminating platforms to their scheme in order to make that work. But we would like your views on the northern approach as opposed to the southern route into Cambridge. So again, interested in hearing what you've got to say. So that's a description of the scheme over the section that we're consulting in this session. I'm now going to hand over to one of our land and property experts, Jorn, who is going to explain to you why we're consulting with you on property compensation issues. So Jorn, can I hand over to you, please?
Thanks, Ian. So my name is Jörn Pace. I'm Land and Property Manager at East West Rail. We also have some other members of the land team on the call this evening to answer any questions you may have. So one of the key roles of the land and property team is to consult with landowners who could be potentially affected by the scheme and keep them updated on the proposals as they develop from this early stage. Inevitably, with a project of this size and nature, the scheme does have land requirements. And as part of our development consent order application, which is likely to be sometime between 2022 and 2024, we will be seeking powers for compulsory purchase. Compulsory purchase, however, would be our last resort after other means of attempting to reach an agreement with a landowner. At this stage, we don't know for certain the land and property which will be needed. We'll be able to provide more information by the next round of consultation. Prior to the launch of this consultation, we wrote to landowners whose land and property who could be potentially required by the route alignments so that we could inform them of our proposals. This also encouraged landowners to get in contact with our specialist land team to give them further information about the scheme, discuss the project timeline, and answer any questions they have. And through speaking with landowners and gaining feedback, it also helps us understand the land use and how we can keep our negative impact as minimal as possible. So on schemes such as these, at the point of a development consent order submission, those landowners whose properties lie within the line of the proposed railway route, who are unable to sell their property at market value, are affected by what's known as statutory blight. And they'll be able to submit a statutory blight notice asking us to buy their property. We recognise that that is later in the programme, which is why we're consulting on a discretionary purchase scheme, the need to sell scheme. And if introduced, this would provide support to those who have a pressing need to sell and will be introduced at the point of the preferred route alignment announcement point, expected later this year. The other key difference being between the statutory blight and need to sell scheme is that the need to sell scheme is not limited to the land within the line of the railway. We're looking for feedback on what people think about this and if it is the right mitigation. There's further information on our website within a section focused on land and property, and this contains a number of guides on the need to sell scheme, blight, compulsory purchase and compensation. There's also feedback forms which are encouraging people to get back to us, and details on how to get into contact. We have a dedicated team who can talk to the landowners about their concerns and answer any questions. I'll now pass back to Hannah, who's going to discuss the consultation further.
Great stuff. Thanks so much, Jon. I can see we've got a lot of really good questions coming in, and some themes are really starting to take shape actually. So we're going to move on to the Q&A quite soon. What I did want to just run over very quickly today, so what we've already done in the meeting today is walk you through the key elements of the proposals in the area near you, and I think it's really key to understand that there are multiple ways that you can find out about these proposals. Obviously these sessions are a great start. You can also have a look at the consultation documents and technical reports that are on our website. Consultation summary document will have landed to everyone inside that zone we talked about earlier in the presentation. We have a community hub online and a resource centre there with additional fact sheets and extra information there if you want to have a look at. And we've got virtual consultation rooms as well, which has the same information but in slightly different ways. We've got interactive maps and those kind of things. One of the key ways that you can also talk to us throughout the consultation is during live chat events, which we'll be promoting through the website. Some dates are already up there, but we'll be able to promote those events through the website, and it just means that you can get sort of a little chat going with one of our experts on the website, which can be very helpful and help address any of the questions that we don't manage to get to today. So we're holding this session today. We've had 2 sessions on this area of the route already, and in May we'll be doing more of these sessions as well, by which time you'll probably have had more opportunity to look through the documentation. I should also point out all of that documentation is available in printed format, which you can request either for yourself or for other people through the website or by calling the various numbers and emailing us through various ways that there are to get in touch, which should all be in the summary document as well. And we can email that to people. I think the last slide on this actually is the contact details as well. I think I've probably covered the next slide just by saying there's lots of different ways you can get involved, and most of these are about ways that you can find out more information and get in touch with the team and talk to the team. The dedicated phone line is one that I've talked about at the bottom here, the 0330 number. Online public events, live chats to the public. If you haven't already been to a live chat, do try them. They're very good ways of making sure that you get some decent responses to your questions coming through if we're not able to get to them today. So without further ado, I think I'm going to hand over to my namesake Hannah on our support side and say, Hannah, what themes are coming through at the moment? What are the key questions that we've got to answer tonight?
Thank you, Hannah, and thank you to everyone who's presented and also everyone who has submitted a question. We have had a number of clear themes emerge. So I want to come to the first one regarding route option E. Ian, I know you've touched on it briefly, but we've had a number of questions about what the main factors were that led to route E being brought forward. Would you mind just quickly covering off?
Yes, I can do. And I'll hand over to Will, who has probably more of the background on that than I do, actually. So route option E was emerged from the last consultation back in 2019 as the route which sort of best met the needs of the business case, which was to connect as many communities and groups of people as possible. Obviously, option E goes through Bedford. And one of the reasons for that is because it provides that connectivity with the centre of Bedford and it will contribute to the regeneration of that town centre. Will, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that we did as you said, Ian. We looked at the full range of our assessment factors. So we have 15 assessment factors. And at the last consultation back in 2019, we set out 5 route option areas. We invited people's comments on those. And then we took those consultation responses into account. We continued our analysis, and using those 15 assessment factors, we came to the conclusion that route E was the best performing route when looking at those 15 assessment factors in the round. Now, I can see that there are a set of questions coming through that relate to the costs of route E and why the costs of our routes sort of changed between consultation and the route option selection, and the extent to which that influenced our decision. I think the first thing to say is that, there were we're using the same 15 assessment factors now. There are 15 assessment factors. Cost isn't the only one. And certainly the benefits of the improved transport connectivity of serving Bedford with the sort of onward connections that come from being a Midland mainline station as well. That was particular where services sort of start and finish. That was particularly important. But also, when you do take those costs into account, it was clear that when we looked at it at route option sort of decision, looking at all those costs developed on a consistent basis, because as we flagged at the time of consultation, we were still developing those costs, and we made the latest cost information that we had at that time available. That then continued to mature. So, for example, one of the things that changed was as we did more work on sort of the balance between what we call the cut and fill balance. So it's basically the extent to which you need to bring more sort of earth to site, how much of your earth you can basically recycle. It became clear that options like route option B and others that required more sort of more viaducts and those sorts of things, that drove more cost. So there were a variety of things like that that are also our understanding of what you needed to do south of Bedford, and the interaction with the Midland Main Line at Wixham's was another factor. So there were a variety of things that drove the costs of some routes up more than others. We have made public all of our cost information that is on our website right now. So we have been sort of transparent about that. But I think the key thing to say is that when we made the route option selection, we did so on the back of a consistent set of costs that treated all routes equally. Route E did do pretty well in that analysis, but it was the overall assessment of the 15 assessment factors, considering the costs and the benefits and the environmental impacts and the range of other factors that led to Route E being selected. Now, obviously, you know, if new information comes to light that leads to us revisiting that, you know, then that is what we will do, because we're obliged to continue to back check the decisions that we've made. And as I say, if there is new information that would lead us to reconsider that decision, then that is what we would do. So, you know, this consultation, you know, if people provide information, we'll take that into account.
Will, just as a final addition to that, some people are asking through the chat what the difference is between a route and an alignment. Just to be really clear, so the routes are the broad areas that Will's just been talking about in relation to Route E. Alignments are the lines on the map, which I've been describing in the presentation earlier on, in terms of the actual line that the railway will take within a particular route area. So all of the alignments that I described earlier are within sort of the Route E footprint. Hopefully that helps.
Thank you, Ian. That covers the next question I was just going to pose quickly. Next, we've had a couple of questions about land. So I was hoping to come to Jorn about what compensation will be available to people who live adjacent to the land impacted.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. So in developing our proposals, we've aimed to keep our negative impact as minimal as possible. That's why when you read through the consultation document, you'll see many of our emerging preferred routes or options cause comparatively less impact to landowners and communities. But where we can't avoid this negative impact and disruption, we'll work with landowners to keep them updated, but then also to get the compensation that they rightly deserve. So on the matter of compensation, we'll abide by the statutory compensation code, and that will apply to land needed for the railway, land that's possibly needed temporarily, or the loss in value of land which is affected but not needed. The leaflets on our website go into further detail on this, particularly one on Part 1 compensation. And also, as mentioned earlier, the need to sell scheme is not limited to land within the line of the railway. So please do take a look at this information, provide us with your feedback, get in touch, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you have. Back to you, Hannah. Thank you,
Jan. The next theme I want to come to is the environment. So Tristan, I was hoping you might be able to help. What is East West Rail's approach to the environment, and when will research and assessments be available?
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. So Ian kind of touched on this at the beginning of his presentation. Our general approach to developing the scheme and developing the alignments that we've got so far has been one where we've prioritised environment and design work, and that means that we've prioritised trying to avoid impacts on environmental features wherever possible. As a result, what we've now managed to achieve is that all of the alignments are avoiding direct impacts on nationally significant environment features. So we're avoiding hitting things like ancient woodlands and avoiding impacts or direct impacts on things like listed buildings. Of course, it's not always possible to avoid all environmental impacts. So what you can read about in the technical document is where those impacts are, where we think they're likely to happen, and what we think the likely mitigation is going to be required. That sits alongside the comparison between the different alignment options and why we think one might be better than the other. As we move forward with the design, and once we've selected our preferred route alignment, we'll continue to design what mitigation that we think is required. And this is going to cover a variety of things like noise barriers, where we locate construction compounds, and where we may need to put replacement habitats. This kind of first step of the environmental impact process is followed on after this once we've gone through our gone through the further design phases and we get towards our statutory consultation, we'll look to publish something called a preliminary environmental information report. So in answer to those questions as to when we'll be publishing lots of detailed information, this is the first step in that process. And the preliminary environmental information report will include all of the information that we understand at the time and what we think those potential impacts are likely to be. Once we've gone through that statutory consultation, we'll then move towards producing something called environmental statement. So the environmental statement will be the kind of development of the preliminary environmental information report, and that will include a full and detailed analysis of the impacts that we think are likely to result or arise as a result of the scheme. And that will be submitted in support of the DCO application. I did note that there was a couple of questions around sort of the direct impact on species, and as I say, that sort of information and that level of detail will be submitted both within the PIR and then, the preliminary environmental information reports, and then also within the environmental statements. But we are working very closely with our statutory regulators, so we work very closely with Natural England and Historic England, so that we can make sure that we're following best practice and we're taking account of their concerns as we move forward. Hand back to you, Hannah.
Thanks very much, Tristan. The next theme I want to cover is electrification of the rail. I wonder if, Will, this is something, or Maria even.
Thanks, Hannah. There's a few things that I want to cover that I've seen coming through on the Q&A, if I may, including electrification and freight. Good evening, my name is Maria Cliff. I'm Head of Operations for East West Rail, and I'm aware, Hannah, we've had numerous questions on freight operation in general and hours of operation. So within the customer experience part of the consultation documents, on pages 33 and 34, if I'm specific, we do reference our hours of operation of the line, and those hours of operation are in relation to both passenger and freight trains. So at this stage, we do not propose any freight running through the night on this line, which I hope will be of some comfort to some of the people on the call today. It's worth noting that there is existing freight on some parts of the route that exists today. So in the Oxford area, between Bletchley and Bedford, and also at the Cambridge end of the route. So we are designing a freight capable route, but predominantly we're here to deliver a passenger railway. So one of the activities that my team is carrying out at the moment and ready for the next stage of statutory consultation is the timetable between Oxford and Cambridge for the passenger services. And then once that's developed to a mature level, we'll be able to take a view on if there is capacity on the route for freight. So we're in close discussions with Network Rail on their kind of wider strategic freight strategy and the freight operating companies themselves to try and understand if there is demand for future freight as well over the next 50 to 100 years. But for us, it's really balancing some of the benefits that comes with modal shift and transporting goods by freight on the railway with the potential impacts on the local communities. And to come right back round to the original question around electrification. So clearly electrification and freight are closely linked in terms of emissions and noise and the impact that could have on local communities. But no decision has been made on electrification of the line yet. We are in discussions with the Department for Transport, but the line does include passive provision in the design. So if the decision is made to electrify the line, that's something that we ensure should be a relatively smooth transition. So thank you. I'll hand back to you, Hannah.
Thanks, Maria. The next theme I want to cover is the customer experience. We've had some questions around this. So why are we consulting on the customer experience at the same time? Martin, can I come to you on this. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Hannah. As I introduced myself earlier, Martin Phillips, Head of Customer Strategy. So this part of the consultation is really important because actually the ultimate experience and the way we operate the service in the end also depends on the infrastructure. So it's important for us to consult at this stage on this. East West Rail Company is also adding as something we call the shadow operator. So this means we are offering insight on a customer and an operational basis into the development of the design decisions for East West Rail. So I hope that just explains a little bit why we're thinking about customer experience and ops. Thanks, Hannah.
Thanks very much, Martin. The next theme we've received is around the Southern Varsity Line option and why this wasn't considered as a route option. Can I come to Will or Paul to answer?
So that's,
Hi, oh, who's just come in? Will, you can take that one.
Yeah, so this is about the varsity, the old Varsity Line route. So we are, we did look at what the options are, when we first, when Network Rail first looked at this, they looked at the old Varsity Line as well. Now, when you look at it, there are a variety of reasons why you wouldn't sort of proceed. The first is that route has already been built on in quite a number of areas, and you would need to demolish a school and a variety of other sort of properties where they've been built. You wouldn't necessarily get around some quite complicated interactions south of Bedford. You wouldn't also actually right now be able to use the existing route because of the priority habitats that have sort of been established. So if you think about the sort of old track bed of the railway and the embankments and those sorts of things, as they've sort of become sort of not used and a bit more sort of overgrown and things like that, they have now become priority habitats. So the actual environmental impact of using the old Varsity Line would also have a negative impact. So I think we just need to just bear those things in mind, and once we've taken those into account, we come back to the fact that Route E does perform best on our assessment factors.
Thank you, Will. The next theme we want to come to is construction. So when is the expected construction of the East West Rail Line? Paul, can I come to you on that question?
Yes, certainly. So in terms of construction start dates, we've got information in the consultation document on page 59, which shows some outline timescales, and it is expected that construction would start around 2025.
Thank you, Paul. The next theme around route alignment is why is East West Rail not following the traffic corridor south of Bedford with the A421? Will, are you best placed to take that question?
I'll take myself off mute. That would be a good start. So essentially, these are all sort of in a similar vein of question in terms of route E versus route B. Route B was the closest in the last consultation, I guess, to following the A421. And for the reasons I've set out a little bit earlier, when you actually look at that route B, it doesn't work out to be cheaper, or for that matter, better value than sort of route E. It delivers fewer benefits because it doesn't necessarily provide the connectivity in places like the centre of Bedford, and it does cost more, for the reasons that I've set out around viaducts and all those sorts of things. And as I say, we have published all of the cost information, as looking at route E and route B, so people can see that.
Thank you, Will. We've had quite a few people asking about the 15 assessment factors. Hannah,
Sure.
are you going to come in on that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'll let Will talk to them if he wants to, but I think probably because we've got some questions to get through, the best thing to do really is say that there is a fact sheet on our website, on the consultation page of the website, which is called, I'm just getting the exact name of it up now, which is called fact sheet : assessment factors. That's on the supporting fact sheet section of the website, and it outlines how we've used those assessment factors so far and exactly what they are. So it literally lists all the 15 assessment factors and explains our approach to using them. So that's available on the website now.
Thank you, Hannah. Did Will want to add in on that? Sorry.
I think I can just very quickly say that the 15 assessment factors are used essentially to evaluate how well the options meet our overall objectives, and they help us determine the benefits of each option to passengers as well as the broader communities as well. So not just people that will use the line, but people that will be near the line. They've been consistently applied since design work began, and we originally published them alongside the 2019 consultation, and we've been using those ever since. So I think it's helpful to understand that all 15 factors are taken into account at each stage in development, and will be applied according to the stage of development, as some may sort of assist to a greater extent than others in differentiating between options. So it may be that in some of those assessment factors, there isn't much between them in specific options. So I think it's worth going and having a look at that fact sheet and having a read of that if that's an area that you're particularly interested in.
Thank you, Hannah. The next theme I wanted to come on to is East West Rail Extension East. We've had the questions around the extension of East West Rail to Felixstowe. Will, I wonder if, or Hannah?
I can jump in on that one as well, actually. So we know that there are some parties that would very much like East West Rail to go further east from Cambridge. The remit of the East West Railway Company is to deliver a railway between Oxford and Cambridge, but we are aware that there are people that, and the East West Rail Consortium being one, which is a consortium of 17 local authorities with whom we work, but we are separate organisations. There is some people would like it to go further east out to the coast. That's not within our current remit, so that's not something that we're actively delivering right now, although there's nothing in the infrastructure that we're developing that would preclude that if our remit were to expand, if government were to expand our remit to go further east. But as things stand, the East West Railway Company is just here to deliver the piece between Oxford and Cambridge. Will, I don't know if I don't know if there's anything you want to add into that.
No, I think that's right. We're not doing anything that would preclude it, and depending on some of the options at the that we offer as part of the consultation, in terms of the Shepworth Junction, there are definitely options there for how you might extend that service further east. So no, we are aware of the the sort of desire for it. And we're not doing anything to preclude it.
Thanks, Will.
It's probably, Hannah, just worth adding to what.
No, carry on.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Hannah. Just to add to what Will said, so we're absolutely in the design, we're not precluding a continuation further east, although it's not part of our brief. But it is worth saying, because I didn't mention it earlier, that certainly a route into Cambridge from the south is much easier to deliver services further east than coming in from the north. I talked about a northern option, didn't I, earlier on, and I think, you know, that's in infrastructure terms, that is more complicated, because trains again would need to reverse out of Bedford and we'd need to construct arcs. I noticed somebody's mentioned that in the chat, but yes, we would need to construct arcs between the various lines to connect them for different movements, if that helps.
Thank you, Ian. I think at this point I need to hand back to Hannah Staunton to just take us through the last few slides for today.
Absolutely. So thank you very much. I'm just going through some of the other comments and questions that we've had in, and I think we've managed to get through the key themes that people have brought up with us today. I would say again, if we didn't manage to get around to your question today, do try and join one of the live chat events where we'll have some of our experts there who'll be able to talk with you, and also maybe come into the events that we're holding later on in the period as well. We will be continuing to update the website as we go with more information as well, so there'll be information being posted up there, and we'll also be posting the events that we're holding so that people who weren't able to attend the sessions will be able to attend them. You'll notice that we've tried very carefully not to use anyone's names in this session. We're trying to make sure that the sessions are available to post without falling foul of GDPR. But I would say thank you so much to everyone that's joined today, and thank you so much for all the questions that you've raised. We will be taking a transcript of all these questions in the comments as well, and making sure that they're considered as part of the ongoing consultation. So thank you very much to everyone that's done that. So what we've talked through today is the detail of the proposals in the area where you live. We've talked a little bit around how you can get more information outside of these sessions and what information is open to you and all the different routes. Now really how to respond to the consultation. That really is the key thing for us, is that we're getting some really rich feedback in from communities along the route to help us as we move forward with the design. So I mentioned that we have a feedback form on the website. You can also download that feedback form, or you can request a paper copy. You can email us as well, consultation@eastwestrail.co.uk. You can send that by email, you can put that directly into the website, or you can send by free post to East West Rail. So we're trying to cover every base we can with responses. For further information or to request a paper copy, you can email contact@eastwestrail.co.uk. Please do that. You can also, as I say, if you're sending in a response, consultation@eastwestrail.co.uk is the best way to do that. Please do make sure that you are submitting your responses to the consultation. That really does help us as we move forward. So I think really the next steps is just to reiterate, we'll be having live chat events moving forward. We'll be having more of these webinar type sessions as well as we move forward into the consultation. So please do keep an eye on the website for that. And really, I think I'll just end on the slide, which gives our contact details, and just to say thank you so much, everyone who's joined us this evening. It's fantastic of you to take time away from what I can assume is a very busy schedule. Everyone's very time pressured, so thank you very much for your attendance tonight, and thank you so much for the comments and questions you brought up as well. They're really helpful and really interesting and insightful. So I'll just, on behalf of the whole team here, say thank you very much and goodbye for this evening.